and we have no time to spare. We Americans live in a great house that democracy built. Right now, that house is on fire.
Good evening, Black people and all allies fighting for Black liberation, Black prosperity, and Black joy. I'm Charles Blow, and welcome to Prime. Senator Raphael Warnock, Amy Klobuchar, Ossoff, Merkley, Padilla, and others took the case for a federal voting rights bill to Georgia today as part of a historic set of Senate Rules Committee field hearings that are expected to take place in several cities across the country. Today's hearings, held in the National Center for Civil and Human Rights in Atlanta, feature state lawmakers and voters, and focus mainly on the voter suppression law signed by Georgia's Republican Governor Brian Kemp earlier this year. Here's what Senate Rules Committee Chairwoman Amy Klobuchar and Senator Warnock told Georgia voters.
And we're here today in Atlanta to shine a spotlight on what has been happening in Georgia and in states around the country to undermine the freedom to vote. Over 400 bills have been introduced, 28 have passed and been signed into law, and in Exhibit A is the one right here in the state of Georgia.
Sadly, what we're seeing in Georgia is an attempt to deny certain people the ability to have their voices heard in our democracy. As I've said time and time again, some people don't want some people to vote.
Predictably, no Republican members of the committee attended, and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell called the hearing a silly stunt in a statement released earlier today. The field hearings are held just one day after Klobuchar also teamed up with voting rights leader Stacey Abrams to host a roundtable with Georgia voters on Sunday to talk about the obstacles they face when voting and about the urgent need for change. It also took place just one day after the one-year anniversary on Saturday of the death of John Lewis, the civil rights icon and congressman from Georgia who was beaten as a young man during a march for voting rights in Selma, Alabama in 1965. But with all of that history on the line, the troubling sentiment is that without a clear path forward, Democrats are frankly scrambling to keep the spotlight on voting rights, and these events are among their last-ditch efforts because realistically, there may not be a way out of the quagmire in D.C. Joining me now to discuss is co-founder of Black Voters Matter, Mr. Cliff Albright. Hello, sir.
Hey, thanks to be here. Glad to be here, Charles.
Absolutely. What do you think about these field hearings? Are they going to be effective in changing sentiment in Congress among the key Senate voters like Manchin and Sinema who have to change their mind in some sort of way to get something through? Or are they just theater to keep the spotlight on the issue?
I think it's actually somewhere in between those two things, right? You're right. It's not going to change any minds. There's really no new information that Manchin and Sinema, or as I call them, Manchinema, that they're going to hear during these hearings that they haven't already heard. So it's not that. I don't think it's just necessarily just, for show, because what these hearings do is that you do get to put some of this information on the record, right? It's no longer just something that is being written about or talked about on the TV shows. It's actually in the congressional record, and that is actually an important step. But the most important thing isn't so much the information that they heard from the witnesses, from Senator Warnock, who did an incredible job, from my dear friend Helen Butler, the Dean of Election Protection here in Georgia, who did an incredible job. The thing that I was really listening for, though, which I did not hear, was from the senators, from Klobuchar on down the line. I didn't hear one of them mention the word filibuster. Now, you can argue that this hearing wasn't for that purpose, right? It's a hearing about what's going on in Georgia and not a hearing about how they're going to get the bill passed. But you know as well as I do, Charles, that they use these hearings as an opportunity to do these monologues and to give their viewpoints and their strategies. And so for nobody to mention the filibuster was really concerning to me.
But you say this is not, you understand that this was not really about the filibuster, but everything is about the filibuster right now. I mean, the only reason that we're still talking about voting rights is because they have not broken the filibuster and moved ahead and gotten this done. The only reason we still, discuss this every other night or maybe every night on this show is because they haven't gotten it done because they haven't dealt with the filibuster. And also, in addition to this issue, the filibuster is going to hold up a lot of other issues the Democrats want to make progress on. So, I want to just shift to the administration. It's good that the senators, the Democratic senators are doing this. Like you said, it reads it into the record. But didn't Joe Biden say he was going to go on the road?
Right.
Where is Joe Biden, Cliff?
That's the question of the hour. Where is the person who last week gave a speech acting like this was the most critical threat since the Civil War? Where's that person, or more importantly, where's the solution that person is going to offer that matches the seriousness of the problem that he outlined? We haven't seen that, and at the end of the day, what we now know is that Joe Biden is more attached to the filibuster than he is to solving the problem of voting rights. His speech was strong, yes, but at the end of the day, if you are not committed to ending or modifying the filibuster, at least doing a voting rights carve-out on the filibuster, then you're not really serious about passing voting rights. That's the bottom line. And although the Senate is a problem and Chinema is a problem, a couple of other members of the Senate, Democrats, are a problem. I believe that if the president were to fully lean in on this filibuster issue, where he could give a clear direction saying, hey, Joe, hey, Sinema, this is the filibuster reform I want to see. Do a carve out and get it done today. I believe that those senators would cave in and would ultimately give in and pass the voting rights. But he hasn't leaned in, and that's the biggest problem that we're facing right now.
See, my thing is this, though. Even if it doesn't work, I need to see that you tried as hard as you can try. I mean, part of the real burn here is that black people scooped you up out of the ashes. There was no way you were going to be the Democratic nominee, and therefore no way you would ever be the president of the United States. And so black people put a lot on the line and went out and voted for you. But it seems to me that, Biden is riding these relatively high poll numbers, and it's mostly because he stays in the middle of the road, doesn't do anything to really upset anybody. He has a poll-tested agenda. He does the things that most Americans say they want done, and doesn't trouble the water around things that are more contentious. And maybe that's a strategy as a politician to try to keep the wobbly people in the middle. It is not a strategy to reward the people who literally saved your political life.
Right, to reward the people.
How do you think about his strategy?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. To reward the people, black folks literally looked at the Biden campaign back in February and said, can these bones have life? And black people blew life into the bones of the Biden campaign. In return, he said that we've always had his back and he'll always have ours. And yet in the moment when we need him most, in the moment when we need him to come out of his moderate framework, in the moment when we need him to value our rights more than he values the filibuster, he is failing epically. And so, no, he is not doing justice to the black voters that literally came out and risked our lives, not once but twice. Once to get him into office, and then secondly to create a Senate here in Georgia that would allow him to push his agenda. It reminds me, though, of, and you may recall, I'm old enough to remember back during the Democratic primary when they were having a debate and Kamala Harris raised the issue of busing. And people were uncomfortable talking about it because they felt that she was calling him a racist, right? But what she was raising was not so much what you thought about segregation, right? We know that Joe Biden was against segregation, but the problem was, just like today, he would say segregation was bad, segregation in schools was bad. I just don't believe in this legislative strategy of busing. I don't think that that's the answer, and I care more about that than I care about the issue of how to solve the segregation problem. That's literally where we are today, where he's saying voting rights is cherished and sacred, and it's the most important thing. But this filibuster is just a little bit more important to me. That has been his track record. Right. And so we needed to have a full discussion of that issue during those debates. We didn't then, and now we're in the situation that we're in.
I mean, you're exactly right. You have a president who it feels like he cares more about the status quo than our status, right?
That's right.
And that is a hurtful thing when you have worked very hard in a political process to change the direction of the country. Let me ask you another question about Representative Clyburn. He was quoted earlier today saying that he thinks that he is making progress on the filibuster. What does that mean?
I don't know, because we're not seeing it right now. Maybe he's making progress by having some behind the door talks with some of the senators that are a little bit wobbly. I don't know if he's talking to Manchin. I don't know if he's talking to Sinema. So I can't really say what exactly he means. I do know this, though, and we've seen some signs of this, that the direct action that we're doing, right, the protest, the freedom ride that we did a couple of weeks ago, the actions today, like the Poor People's Campaign, they had about 100 people get arrested. Last week, Representative Beatty getting arrested. If we can keep up this pressure, we shouldn't have to. But if we can keep up this pressure, if we can keep up this direct action, right, the civil disobedience, that was having, I believe it's having an influence already. And if we continue it and sustain it, we might be able to get some of these senators that are sitting on the fence,
Influence
as well
on
as
whom?
this president.
It's having an influence on who, Cliff? It's having an influence on whom, Cliff?
Yeah, I believe, and again, this is just going off of some signs that we're seeing from people that we're talking to, that it is having an influence on some Congress people, right, in the House, who are becoming more vocal, right. It may be having an influence on some of the senators that have been sitting on the fence, and they're starting to lean a little bit more and seeing, like, look, people are serious about that. Not quite sure yet how much of an impact it's having on President Biden, but there are some signs that that there's still a possibility that he may make some movement. And so I'm just reading the tea leaves and just going off some things that we're seeing and hearing. We believe that we're moving a needle. It's just going to take a little bit more than that. It shouldn't take that much.
Cliff Albright, I certainly hope that you are moving a needle. We need that needle moved. Thank you so much for your time, and we really want to praise the fact that you're sitting in front of that meticulously organized bookshelf, which is just extraordinary. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you so much.